I bet you recognize a lot of the folks up here. These are the patient advocate and patient organization stakeholders. And again, it's important that we, as you're thinking through here, that you figure out who you know up here, but more importantly, who you don't, and how you can engage with them, what you can learn from them. And we're going to go in order as it is in the agenda, because that's just the lucky way things are put together. So Miriam O'Day is with the NORD, National Organization for Rare Diseases, and we'll kick off with you.
Thank you very much to RDLA for including us today. NORD is very happy to be here and tell you a little bit about what we do. We're a 501c3 organization. We are a unique federation of voluntary health organizations, and we have a commitment to the identification, treatment, and cure of rare diseases. And we do that through education, advocacy, research, and service. And our vision and guiding principles for our advocacy initiatives include awareness and recognition of the challenges faced by people living with rare diseases, access to therapies and diagnostics, and a culture of innovation that includes social, political, and financial focus. Our regulatory environment encourages development and also timely approvals. Thank you very much. We have a membership base, a board of directors, a working advocacy committee, a corporate council of industry partners, and they have a subcommittee, a working committee of an advocacy committee, and we have a group of medical advisors who work for NORD. And those are all of the ways that you can engage, but also as individuals, we would welcome hearing from you. We have strategic alliances and coalitions, and again, we're very pleased to be here and collaborate with RDLA. So some of the high-level issues that we're concerned about, I'm just going to name a few. NORD has a patient assistance program. As you may or may not know, we help individuals get access to rare disease therapies, and we're very concerned about PAPs within the marketplaces. We are very concerned about access to rare disease therapies for individuals who purchase their insurance through the marketplaces. And we're working on a concept of having a ombudsman at the level of the Department of Health and Human Services. NORD is also very concerned about the fact that you can get an orphan drug designation, but that doesn't ensure reimbursement with Medicare and Medicaid. So we have to figure out a way to draw a dotted line between the ODA and reimbursement, and we're working on that idea as well. We are developing a rare action network for state-based advocacy, and we're going to have some state-based employees and work with our membership in that regard. And Diane Dorman, who's the Vice President of Public Policy, many of you know her. She was at the White House last week talking about the 6 protected classes within Medicare Part D and the importance of making sure that those continue to exist moving forward. NORD will be having a Senate briefing on March the 20th, and you'll hear more information about that from us. So I would just commend all of you for showing up, let you know that decisions are made by those who show up, and that legislators make decisions every single day. And it's important that they see the faces of the people who are impacted by those decisions. Now, the decision that they may make may not directly affect you in terms of whether or not they're going to have funding for rare diseases, but they do affect you if they make a decision not to fund in that regard. So hearing from you is very important. And thank you again to RDLA for including us today.
You saw Natasha earlier this morning. She was speaking about newborn screening and Baby's First Test. Baby's First Test is a Genetic Alliance program, and she's got her hat tipped a little more towards Genetic Alliance now.
So as Dean said, I'm with Genetic Alliance, and just to give you a bit of background, the mission of Genetic Alliance is to transform health through genetics. And we really do that by bringing the individual, family, and community perspectives into all types of dialogue, whether that's research, policy, education, really bringing all those stakeholders forward. I actually don't really need the slides, that's okay. So we do that in a range of different ways, but some of our activities really fall into what we call kind of our three enterprises. One is maternal and child health, also known as expecting health, which is where all the newborn screening stuff that I talked about earlier today falls into. Another is called Genes in Life, which is really, there's information about, genes and DNA, but not really about genetic services. So we really are out there connecting the dots on that front. And then also working on an enterprise called BioTrust, which is where we do much more of our research initiatives. In terms of our policy activities, we have the Newborn Screening Saves Lives Act, which I already spoke about today. But one thing that when most people think about policy and Genetic Alliance, they think of the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act of 2008, which we led that coalition. It took 12 long years to get that passed, but we finally did in 2008. And even though that is passed, we always saw that as just a first step in terms of really making sure that no one is discriminated against based off of their genetic information. And now that it's been 5 years, we really are starting to pull together a committee to look at what has happened since that piece of legislation has passed, what has been the impact, and what should be our next steps in that regard. We also are involved in genetic testing oversight, really looking to see how do new regulations, what are the outcomes of those regulations, those discussions? Is there any burden on the lab? Are there any IRB issues? And if FDA lacks resources, then how are they going to take on more? How does that really work out? But in all of those issues, we really want to make sure that patients and healthcare providers are part of those discussions, really making sure that that dialogue is open to the public. In terms of some ways that you all can get involved, we have our disease info search, which you just Google disease info search and it comes up. We have 8,000 conditions listed, and we have over 800 disease advocacy organizations that are a part of that. And it really is a network and a way to showcase what your advocacy organization provides. Is it more support? Is it funding? Is it research? And really to get your name out there and to be able to show the capacity that advocacy groups have in really building the healthcare system. We also have our Genetic Alliance Registries and Biobank, which is really a co-op model in terms of how biobanks and registries are run. So our Registries and Biobank, which is the co-op model in terms of getting registries up and biobanks up for different size advocacy organizations. And then we have also our advocates list, which you can easily be a part of. And that's really the way to get up-to-date information about our different policy briefings, our different papers, statements that are going out. And that's updated, obviously, year-round with a good bit of activity every week. So those are our general activities.
Great. Thanks, Natasha.
Yep.
And this is Nicole Boyce. She's with Global Genes.
So a huge thanks to RDLA for including us today. Global Genes, our mission is pretty clear and simple. It's to help eliminate the challenges of rare conditions. And we do that through a variety of ways. One, through collaboration. Most of you here we've worked with in some capacity. You're either a member of our Advocacy Alliance, an advocacy leader, or just an organization that we've had the good fortune of working with in some way, shape, or form. We are building out tools and programs that help educate and empower patient advocates. Our goal, much like RDLA, is to help equip patient advocates on the rare disease journey. And what that means, it can mean a lot of things. It could be, how do I start a nonprofit? Do I need to how do I lobby on the Hill like we're doing here today? We co-produced with RDLA a toolkit. We have our first few that have just gone live. Some of you have the printed versions, but you can go to globalgenes.org and see the electronic versions. And we've collaborated with many rare disease organizations as contributors, as well as content partners. So you'll see that kind of be a theme throughout the toolkits that will continue to be developed, as well as other educational programs like webcasts, et cetera. One of our biggest goals and challenges is how do we, really work to collaborate within the community, and then in doing so, how do we help continue to empower you as patient advocates? And we like to talk a lot about sharing best practices, like we're all doing here today. and creating a platform for shared learnings. And we do that through other programs, much like our Patient Summit and other opportunities for education throughout the year. One of the things that Julia said earlier that I just really want to make sure that we all kind of, commit to is, none of this will work unless we do exactly what she said, which is we take what we learn and we go out and we share it with our network, and we go and we engage others, because we are kind of carrying the torch for those in the community that can't be here, can't collaborate, or don't have kind of the confidence to go out and kind of take that first step. So look at yourselves as leaders here, going out and helping us carry the torch to try to create new Julia Jenkins and create new Tracy Van Hootens and create new patient advocacy leaders out there to help carry the torch. We as an organization, we're not a lobby organization, as many of you know. What we like to do, much like RDLA, is really educate around issues, especially legislative issues, and give you kind of the broad landscape so that you can become more educated and around a particular topic, but then it's up to you to make a decision as to what's relevant for you and what you want to carry forth or move forward with. So we usually support many different types of legislation that will positively impact the community, but we don't often go out and create legislation, et cetera, just to make that clear. But you can just like through RDLA and with our website, you will always hear stories, you'll hear successes, events that are happening within the community, different legislation, who's signing on, et cetera. So you can use us as kind of another resource and link to garner more insights and information. We did, however, want to give you an update on one letter that we wrote. This is around a topic that's obviously near and dear to all of our hearts, and about 150 of you actually signed on to this letter as well. And this is in regard to the Affordable Care Act. And we sent a letter to the HHS in June of last year. And the main theme was, that we're concerned that payers will continue to use cost containment measures to prevent patients who are actually sick from accessing their treatment regimen as prescribed by their physician. And that was kind of one of the biggest takeaways. And so what we did was we created and offered up examples of how we might be able to change some of the wording and what was in that legislation to be better equipped to support what we care about in rare disease. And you can see on the slide, it's basically specialty tier placement. We ask that for a therapy used to treat a rare disease or condition, the total cost sharing in a calendar month for such a therapy would be limited to $500. You guys can see how we address the last limited provider networks, et cetera, step therapy protocols, and prior auth. We did not, as of today, receive any word back from HHS, so we want to take a next step, and we'll obviously want you guys involved. What we're looking to do is start gathering stories and feedback from you all about your experience with, your health plans and this whole process. And what we'll do is we'll aggregate that data. We'll bring it kind of to the forefront, or aggregate the data, and then we will put together a report should something, we see some negative trends coming through, and report that back to HHS with your help. So again, we just want to make sure that we are keeping you guys involved. We rely a lot on the community to participate and share your stories. And in this case, this is an opportunity for us to have you communicate back how your health coverage and how the Affordable Care Act is impacting you, and how we can help together make some changes moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Nicole. We're halfway through the panel. Remember, as you're listening, not only what they're telling you, but how can you engage back with them? And what is it that you need to do, particularly with the folks that you don't know here? Emil Kakis actually wears a number of hats like many of us. Today, on this panel, he's representing the Every Life Foundation.
Thanks, Dean. Thank you all for taking the opportunity to listen and come here to Washington. The Every Life Foundation has a number of programs, and RDLA was one of them that Julia came up with, and We've been sort of the parent organization of RDLA in funding it and supporting it. We have the Cure the Process campaign. We also support an art contest and Rare Voice Awards for people who speak on behalf of rare diseases on the Hill. So let's go on to the next slide. The foundation itself is dedicated to accelerating biotechnology innovation for rare disease treatment. So we're focused on the point where a scientist has a great idea to get it all the way to approval where people can get access. That's the part of the process we focus on. And we're trying to do this in a scientifically sound way by promoting workshops, discussion, white papers, and in some extent we do grassroots efforts and support legislation. We believe no disease is too rare to deserve treatment. That is, we've done all the science, we figured out what the treatment is, somehow we should be getting that treatment to people. It shouldn't just be sitting there in a scientist's lab. And that seems to happen more often than we'd like to see. We do believe all treatments should be safe and effective. We should establish that they're safe and effective. But how we establish what's effective, I think, is the thing that needs to be improved, and we'll talk about that in a moment. We do believe there's more, we could be doing more with the science we already have, that there is already a lot of good science, and things that could be translated that are not translating. And we know of a lot of examples and written a paper on those examples where we talk about 15. In fact, one of those diseases in the 15 actually just got approval, so it actually has translated. I want to focus in on FDASIA and implementation. One of the big things that EverLife Foundation has worked on, which is trying to improve access to accelerated approval process for rare diseases, which has been very difficult because the kind of science needed to support the use of a blood test or a urine test or something like that as a measure of efficacy has been difficult because there usually is never, this disease has never been studied before, and so the standards required for that makes it impossible. And that situation exists despite the fact that many of our rare diseases have really clear biology. That is, we know exactly the gene, let's say it's defective, we know exactly what it's doing. And we should be able to use markers like that for these really terrible diseases, especially when doing clinical trials might take several years or might be impossible due to the irreversible neurologic disease that maybe that's occurring or other things. We think there's a lot more that could be done. So in FDASIA, inside FDASIA, there was a part of the bill that said that the FDA had to come up with a guidance on how to improve access to accelerated approval for rare diseases. A guidance was put forth. It didn't have everything it needed. We've put together a white paper which talks from industry and from patient foundation perspective how to put together a very rigorous scientific framework that is still more plausible, more, let's say, predictable, so people could actually know what to do to go to the next step rather than have it be pure subjective judgment. We have provided that to the FDA. We have been in negotiation discussions with them. The congressional letter also is helping them push ahead, but we're at a very critical moment. The FDA is going to come out with a final guidance by law by July, and therefore we'll find out what it is they've come up with. We do hope that they've taken the ideas forth to create a more scientifically sound framework would help get more rare diseases, not all rare diseases, but at least some rare diseases through the accelerated approval pathway. And we need to start making that first step on some of these diseases. Beyond that, on the next slide, Cure the Process. Okay, so we're working on what's called Cure the Process 2. Now, we came up with the Cure the Process campaign. Just to be clear, everyone, it's not cure the FDA or cure the biotech industry. It's cure the process, meaning we got to figure out how to work this through, and it's about the development process. We do think there's some things that are still left. We're putting them in what we call Cure the Process 2. We still need to improve and specialize FDA review. That is, the way the FDA is structured, there's a lot of rare diseases that don't really fit well within any particular division, where there's really not that much expertise in the area of need. And we think this may be an issue of funding for the FDA, but also an issue of organization and how they develop their divisions. And we think there needs to be improvement in how they specialize so that people trained in an area are actually reviewing the drugs of that area. And that's hard to do, but that's what we need to go toward. We need to rationalize safety requirements, and there is ICH guidelines, international guidelines on how it should be done, but I think in some ways in the US it's being applied more strictly or rigorously in a way and not employing all the flexibility. We think that needs to be improved so that studies don't go offshore as has been happening lately, a lot of studies starting in the UK or in Europe. We also think we need to incentivize drug development, and we think there might be a way to use market exclusivities to allow companies that have big market drugs to incent them to then do development of in-orphan indications for those big market drugs, which doesn't happen now because the companies don't want to risk their big market. But if they had some market exclusivity for their total market, they might be willing to start investing in some rare disease indications. So that's part of what the campaign is. I just want to add one more thing since my 5 minutes is up. I started the foundation 5 years ago, and we've had tremendous success. I didn't know going, Dr. Kakis Goes to Washington, what was going to happen. It could be a bad movie. It's turned out pretty well, I think, and we certainly haven't solved everything, but I feel like we've made progress, and Julie has been a big part of that. She's now executive director of the foundation, but I want to put forth today that I'm committing today, personally, $5 million to an endowment for the Everlife Foundation to help support the foundation and RDLA going forward.
Thank you, Emil. Yeah, Emil's been quite the character back here in DC, and I think he's been really, well, that's up to Julia. He's been really an advocate for us, and we do appreciate all of that. Next up is Stephanie Krenrich with the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
First of all, thank you for having us, Julia, RDLA. It's really an honor to be here, and we really appreciate it. We love working with other groups at the foundation, and what I'm going to do today is just briefly go through what cystic fibrosis is, what we do at the foundation, our federal policy agenda, a little bit about our state agenda, kind of some successes we've had in the past, and what we do advocacy-wise. I expect you to give me the hook if I go on too long, because I know I'm looking at you. Anyway, as some of you may know, cystic fibrosis is a rare genetic disease. There are about 30,000 people in the United States with cystic fibrosis. What happens is the mutation or the problem in the body that causes the genetic problem that causes CF makes mucus build up in the body. And what it does, it clogs the lungs and other systems, and the clogging of the lungs and the other systems can cause life-threatening infections. When in the 1950s, when the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation was created, kids with cystic fibrosis didn't live to attend elementary school. And today, we have people with cystic fibrosis living into their 30s and 40s and beyond, and we are so grateful for the advances that we've made. Pretty soon, more than 50% of those with cystic fibrosis are going to be over 18, which is huge for us. Really great. It's really great. And the mission of the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation is to promote research into cystic fibrosis, promote drug development, and really improve the lives of those with the disease. Our policy agenda, first, is to increase funding for NIH and FDA. We wouldn't be where we are today without funding for NIH. Little known fact, NIH Director Francis Collins was on the team that found the cystic fibrosis gene 25 years ago. We love him. He comes and speaks at our conferences. We think he's great. But he couldn't have done it without NIH funding. And a lot of the technologies that have been used to find some innovative new cystic fibrosis treatments, we wouldn't have it without NIH funding. So we're up on the Hill all the time talking about that. The Food and Drug Administration, funding for the FDA. As I know, Vertex was on the last panel, so I'm positive they talked about Kalydeco, the newest game-changing drug for cystic fibrosis, approved in 2012, that actually corrects the root genetic cause of CF. We were seeing, because of this drug, we're seeing people come off lung transplant lists, huge increases in lung function, raising of body, I mean, really, it's just been incredible. And it got through the FDA in 3 months, which way ahead to the FDA, way ahead of where it, of how fast it should have taken. So what we want to see is we want to see that replicated. And the FDA needs to have the resources to be able to retain the folks at the FDA who can really move these drugs through quickly. We also are concerned about effective implementation of FIDASIA. There is legislation that the FDA or that the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation worked with our congressional champions to push. It was the expanding and promoting, oh gosh, I wrote it down. It's the worst. EXPERT is the acronym for it, and I worked on it 2 years ago, so I keep forgetting the full name. But what it did was it encouraged the FDA to do outreach, proactively reach out to rare disease experts in the rare disease community when they're reviewing drugs for rare diseases. So that includes researchers and doctors and patients. And we want to make sure that that's implemented effectively. We also want to make sure that the breakthrough therapies designation program is implemented effectively. A new drug for our new combination therapy for cystic fibrosis, a new combination therapy for cystic fibrosis that's moving through the FDA was the first to get the breakthrough designation. We love it. We want it to be implemented effectively. We have a very active grassroots program. We have 150,000 people in our email network and our advocacy network. They sent 55,000 emails last year to Congress on issues that are important to us. We did 400 meetings last year during our lobby days. We have 2 big lobby days a year. One is coming up in April. Social media, we are very active with that. And we've been very successful with some of our programs in the past. We've done bills, we've done letters. We had a briefing a few weeks ago on the cystic fibrosis model for drug discovery and development and care delivery. We have a network of 110 care centers throughout the country that we fund and accredit. It's specialized cystic fibrosis care. So we think that our model can serve as an example for other rare diseases and other rare disease groups, both drug development and care delivery and our advocacy network, and they are incredible and really move things through. So what we want to do in terms of working with other groups, we want to work with you. We want to help you. Everyone at our foundation is more than willing to talk to you about our successes and how they can be replicated. So again, thank you for having me.
Thank you. You know, cystic fibrosis, before I got all involved in rare disease, I would have thought it was, heart disease and everybody had it. And you all have done a wonderful job of that whole awareness piece. There's a lot to be learned there. Let's see, Eric Goscho is with the National Health Council.
And thank you, Julia and Jen, for having me here today. I'm going to tell you really briefly who we are at the National Health Council and some of the policy areas that we're currently working on. So similar to RDLA, we bring together various stakeholders to help meet our mission. Our core constituency of members are patient advocacy organizations. So our scope and our membership is broader than RDLA in that we have not only rare disease organizations, but also organizations that represent conditions that have broader patient populations. We also have other stakeholders in membership as well. So these include other nonprofit organizations, pharmaceutical companies, device makers, biotech, provider groups, and insurers. So we really bring together a large range of voices to help us meet our mission, which is to provide a united voice for people with chronic diseases and disabilities. I'll talk to you real briefly about a few of the things we're working on. The first has to do with the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. Right now, open enrollment is going on for folks who are buying insurance plans from the marketplace. But what we're seeing is that most people are making their decisions based strictly on the amount of the premium. Whereas depending on what plan you pick, your out-of-pocket costs for things like co-pays and co-insurance and deductible can really make your overall cost vary by up to 600%. The problem is there's not a lot of information for people out there to actually understand what these out-of-pocket costs are and how your plan selection will actually dictate how much you pay. So we put together a website called puttingpatientsfirst.net. That's a really cool site that actually allows you to put in your expected utilization. So you can say how many doctor visits you think you'll need over the course of the year, both primary care and specialists, how many hospitalizations you might need, surgeries. And you can also put in any medications that you're taking. It has every FDA-approved medication in our database that allows you to actually see, depending on what your utilization rate is, how the different plans that you pick might actually drive your total spending over the course of the year. So we certainly encourage people who are still looking for the right insurance plan to go on and use this tool. The other thing that it does is allows people to share their story when it comes to actually buying insurance from the marketplace, and then as we move further into the year, how they're actually able to access their treatments based on their insurance plan. The reason for this is that we really are looking for anecdotes of people who either have had a great benefit from the Affordable Care Act or potentially more importantly, people who are still struggling to find the right insurance plan. So as we go through and begin to make modifications to the Affordable Care Act in coming years, we'll really be able to take all this information that we're learning from patients out in the real world and take it to Congress, take it to the administration, take it to the states, and realize where there still is more work that needs to be done. Another hot topic that we're working on right now is the implementation of FDASIA. I'm sure a lot of people here are aware of the patient-focused drug development program that was a series, that's going to be a series of 20 disease-specific meetings where they bring together patients and caregivers and FDA staff to really learn how people view what it's like to live with their condition and how they view their treatment options where they exist. However, as everyone in here knows, there are far more than 20 conditions. And our goal here is to make sure that the way they conduct these meetings are really helping us create a methodology for FDA to be able to engage with patients outside of these meetings as well, and to make sure that if industry is actually doing what we want them to do, which is talking to patients and learning what outcomes matter most to them, that they'll be able to use this information that they learn as they take their product to the FDA for approval. So that's kind of what we're doing there, is trying to move the needle on patient engagement, which we think is something that we're starting to see from FDA and other agencies, but we still think we have a ways to go there. Finally, I'll talk very briefly about this, is the Modern Cures Act. It's actually going to be one of the asks for folks tomorrow. So I'll be doing a breakout session afterwards, so I won't go too much into depth. For the people who will be in one of the other breakout sessions, I'll just say real briefly that it's a piece of legislation that encourages companies to be able to pursue products that might lack patents, but will treat an unmet medical need. It will also create a business model for personalized medicine and companion diagnostics. So for those of you who aren't in my breakout session, we're asking for people up on the Hill to ask for co-sponsorship of the bill. And also we'll shortly be sending out a sign-on letter for organizations to be able to officially endorse it as well. So with that, I will stop. And again, thank you for having me.
We're coming around the fourth corner. Jeff Allen is with Friends of Cancer Research.
Thank you for the invitation to join you today. This is a really great conference and a great turnout, and I know you all are going to be destined for great things as you move throughout the rest of your conference and up on the Hill. Friends of Cancer Research is an organization here in Washington, D.C., a think tank, an advocacy organization. Actually, only a small component of our work is focused on legislative policy, although we are a science policy-driven organization. Most of our program starts very deep within the science, and we look at current challenges in cutting-edge drug development with the goal of accelerating the time from first discovery to actually making it through to being on the market. And I firmly believe that can be done. It has been done in some cases. But we like to work with the research community, including early-stage academic researchers, companies, and the FDA, is how do we streamline that process? So a lot of our work throughout the year is really developing regulatory strategies about how some of these things can be different. For example, we're getting ready to launch a large multi-year, multi-drug trial in lung cancer to demonstrate that this indeed can be done differently. And it will be a clinical trial that will be governed by one singular protocol, but have the ability to put in multiple drugs at the same time to alleviate the cost, the number of patients, the time to set up, the time to study, and the time to review the new drugs that are successful in getting through the process. And we think this is a model that a number of different disease settings could use. It just really increases efficiency. But it takes a lot of work, it takes a lot of partnership, and but again, I think we can do this, but we all have to be prepared to do business differently, because by continuing to do things the same, we will continue to see some of the statistics that were raised in the earlier panel, where we are reaching 15 years in order to get a new discovery to market. From a legislative standpoint, we often do try and build upon our scientific programs in order to look at opportunities to achieve our goals through the legislature. A number of my friends here today have mentioned FDASIA and the important programs that are contained in that. For our contribution was the development of the Breakthrough Therapies designation. I'm happy to hear that Kelly from the previous panel was saying that her members find a great deal of value in this, but I hope that the end users, being all of you in the room and the people that we work with, are seeing the benefits of the Breakthrough Therapies designation. The goal here was really to identify some of the most promising compounds that are showing unprecedented activity early in their development program. And based on the great science that's out there, this is happening with greater frequency. But in order to capitalize on these great findings, we need a new process in order to get through the clinical development program in a more efficient way. And that is really the bottom line of the Breakthrough Therapies designation, to formalize the process and increase the collaboration between the research community and the FDA to design the best strategies to expedite the development of these promising drugs. It's great to see how much this is being used. There's been over 40 designations given in about the last 2 years. And 3 approvals that have already occurred because of it. This was not intended to be a cancer-specific bill by any means. Most of our legislative work, in fact, pretty much all, we oftentimes use cancer as a model, but are certainly interested in looking at how oncology and practices developed to address some different cancers can be applied to many different disease settings, including, of course, the rare disease space, which many cancers fall into. But I would ask, as you think about some of these programs, specifically those in Fidesia, there has been some concern drawn that perhaps these programs, like the Breakthrough Therapies designation, like accelerated approval, like orphan drug status, are really starting to press the accelerator, perhaps beyond the level that some people are comfortable with. And so I think it's really incumbent upon all of our groups to work together and say, this is a positive. We need to see more of this. In order to do business differently, we need to support these programs and others like them. So in the coming days, we will be working, hopefully with all of you, with many of our partner organizations, to generate a sign-on letter to just reiterate our support for these types of programs and their use at the FDA to make sure that the general public sees the importance of this and continues to support doing business differently. So thanks for being here today, and I wish you best of luck as you continue on your journey for the rest of the week.
Thank you, Jeff. Cecilia Aradazas from Faster Cures, last but not least.
There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you, Julia and RDLA, for having me. It's an honor to participate in this panel. And really quickly, Faster Cures is an organization that's based in Washington that really looks at the ecosystem that Todd had mentioned earlier, and trying to figure out what's standing in the way of progress, and more importantly, how do we get around those barriers to progress in order to really speed up the time it takes to take a promising scientific discovery and really deliver it to patients in as quick a way as possible. So it's all about speed, acceleration, and efficiency, and that kind of is the bedrock of our policy priorities. When we think about our role here in Washington, it's really to look at our federal investment in research and development and trying to figure out how best to, spur a lot of the innovative approaches that's necessary to deliver new medicines to patients in a better way. Business as usual is not working. And the other aspect of it is the efficiency factor. One of our campaigns, which many of you have participated in, and we certainly encourage you to kind of start thinking about this from this vantage point, is really that time equals lives. And that sense of urgency, that sense of purpose, really comes from your voice and your kind of punctuating the point of the patient's role in this research and development ecosystem. What's been really fascinating at Faster Cures is that, we're not a membership organization. We look at the ecosystem, so we work with industry partners, academic partners, with independent research institutes, and most importantly, with patient foundations that either fund research or are actively involved in research. And when we look at this ecosystem, it's not the pipeline that you're quite familiar with, but it's really this dynamic continuum that at the center of is the patient. I looked at the checklist that you're going to be using for a lot of your meetings in the next couple of days. I wanted to just add a point here about educating members of Congress and their staff about the research and development process. You can never make any assumptions about the level of understanding. I mean, remember, you're one of maybe 10 to 15 meetings that morning. So think about, how you can, in a very quick way, underscore the process and why this matters, but more importantly, what your role is in that process. Because when you think about the R&D ecosystem, patients are not the end user alone. You're not just the ones participating in clinical trials. Without patients, there is no research. You have to be, for research to actually move forward, for us to get a new product to market, we need clinical trials. That's our time. You need tissue. That's your body. And you need records, because without records, there's no way you can really track whether something's working or not. And that's your ability to check the box and say, I'm willing to share my hopefully electronic health records, not just the paper records. But those are some of the kind of points of view that I wanted to share and really start some of the remarks that way, because your voice and your role in really shifting kind of the way research and development is working, people is so important. And the most important, and not just that it's important, is that it's actually delivering results. You heard from Stephanie and seeing how the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation has really played a significant role in not just advocating for a disease and raising awareness, but really getting in there, understanding the science and translating that into a product that can improve patients' lives. And that's the kind of, I think, sophistication that patient advocates bring now. And that might not be pretty obvious to the staffers that you're talking to. So I say go in there with your A game, but definitely try to remind them about the power of the patient and your level of knowledge about the system that we're in, what's standing in the way, because you're the experts. They're listening and they're looking for advice. So by all means, leverage that. Thank you.
Thank you. So by now you're probably encouraged a bit and overwhelmed and not knowing quite what to make of all of this energy. But the trick is, how do you engage with them?